Okay, so last time I went live, it was the day before my birthday, and I had just gotten my books in my hand for the first time. And I was basically saying that was the best birthday gift I could have given myself, to be obedient to God and to persevere through everything that seemed like this wasn't going to be viable. So, some of the stuff I was saying was about, how I even came to actually live for God, because, I believed in God my whole life, but, there's to believe God and then there's to have faith in God. So basically I was saying that how I came to God was not the average way that it's pronounced that you believe in God. A lot of people believe that, God will basically give you this big revelation or this big encounter with him, and that's how people, come to start living for him. For me, that wasn't the case. For me, I didn't want to stop smoking. I didn't want to stop drinking. A lot of people feel like it's preached a lot that God will take the taste of smoking out your mouth and he'll take the desire to drink from you, and you just won't have to, deal with that, and you'll just be so in love with God that you'll be able to do X, Y, and Z. That wasn't the case for me. When I did stop, it was a conscious decision, and then after I made the conscious decision, that's when God stepped in and then removed the desire to smoke, and then removed, the desire to want to go out and drink and do stuff like that. And it's always a temptation, because you always have those memories, the good memories anyways, which I am writing a poem called Sin Senses. I'll probably get on and read that whenever I finish it. But basically, when it comes to temptation, the devil is tempting you to want to go do the stuff that you used to do. You only tend to remember the good things that happen with that stuff. You never remember all the terrible things that made you quit in the first place. So that's what that was. But I'm also going to read a poem from my book, My Poetic Existence. It goes on pre-sale next week. But a lot of people, when they don't believe, they either don't believe because their church hurt, and a believer had acted in a way that they don't reflect a believer, and they have driven somebody away. I'm trying to find the poem. And they've driven that person away from the church. And the other reason that people don't believe is because we preach this general understanding that, when you come to God, it's all or nothing. And when you come to God, you have to be ready. You have to be perfect. You have to have, all of these things, when that's just not the case. And that wasn't the case for me. Like, when I came to God, it was kind of a last resort. It's kind of like disrespectful, but when I came to God, it was a last resort. I didn't have nothing else to try, because I've tried everything else. And when I came to God, I still wanted to smoke. I still wanted to drink. I still wanted to kick it. It took a long time to stop cursing, because that stuff was embedded in my brain, and I had to retrain my mind to function without curse words, which I didn't realize how much I was cussing. So a lot of people, when they don't believe, they either hurt, and there's a deep rooted issue to that, and a lot of people only want to address the fruit. Like, we can keep picking the fruit off the tree all day, but as long as those roots are still in the ground, their fruit is going to keep coming back. So there's that portion of it, and then there's the misunderstanding of how to come to God and why to come to God, and where you need to be in order to come to God. In reality, God meets you where you at, and as long as you're willing, then God will help you through the rest. So I decided to read the poem called To the Unbeliever. So I'm just going to read it, because I could be talking all day. So it's called To the Unbeliever. Do you really want to know the truth, or is your mind already made up in persistence? Unrelenting to believe God is dead, he's not real, or he never existed. That Jesus is no different than the Easter Bunny, Santa Claus, or any other fictional legendary. You believe the Bible is a fairy tale and Jesus was just for the story's sake necessary. That we're brainwashed Christians who blindly worship a cosmic dictator, or that slave owners agreed on one common denominator, that the fable of God crafted by the European history kept the black mind enslaved, in line, and obedient. But your recipe for unbelief in God and the Bible's authenticity is neglecting a few key ingredients. The Bible has been subjected to every scientific textual analysis possible to humanity and has in every way been proven to be authentic. The Bible has proven to be more historically and archaeologically accurate than any other ancient book presented. Professionals deem Matthew, Mark, and Luke as reliable eyewitness accounts, including the death and resurrection of Jesus. And in no manner am I trying to be facetious, but even the most reputable historians, atheists included, agree on one thing, and that's Jesus Christ existed. Or is your unbelief that committed? Some believe that because the Bible was written by man that it makes it undependable. But God even says that all scripture is given by inspiration directly from him. So if a student takes notes during a lecture, are the notes no longer credible? Well, what about the Bible being translated numerous times over the centuries? Doesn't that make it unreliable? Well, it's undeniable that the Bible is the only book that withstood generations keeping the same message. So doesn't that make it viable? Some people prefer science because it's foolish and naive to believe outside of proven facts. We revere the greatest scientists whose discoveries have the largest impact. We award their logic in regards to science, but in reference to a higher power, we revoke their medal. The most esteemed scientists like Galileo, Pascal, Boyle, Newton, Kelvin, and Mendel. These men were convinced that the evidence of intelligent design in nature was an indicator of the existence of an intelligent creator. Some believe in the Big Bang and evolution, both of which are theories. Neither has been proven. So it's not the lack of evidence that stops you from believing, it's the evidence that you're choosing. You want science to prove that God exists when science can't prove that he doesn't. So when you say prove God exists, I say prove that he doesn't. The truth is, you can always find something to support your unbelief. But blessed are those who believe without having to see or naturally perceive. It is scientifically agreed that creation was a supernatural event, outside of the natural realm, which may be hard to conceive. But it is logically impossible for science to throw out any hypothesis that lies outside of its boundaries. The mystery about God goes beyond our human understanding, but not against it. So the most common reason God is deflected, Jesus is a threat to our comfortability, so it's hard to think about it and be objective. Well, if God exists, does he really know everything? 1 John 3:20 says, "For God is greater than our heart and knows all things." Well, then he knew the world would be evil, but he still created men in all their shame. Well, in the same token, Jesus knew he had to be crucified, but he still came. If we know something won't be easy but worth it, do we still set out to do it? We commit based on possibilities. How much more if in advance we knew it? Well, then why does he allow disaster and sickness and bad things to happen to good people? If God is so good, why did he create evil? Everything God made or created is very good, and Genesis is where it was first stated. Evil comes from the absence of his goodness. It wasn't created. Evil, or just like cold, comes from the absence of heat, and the absence of light produces darkness. When God takes away his goodness and light, like in Isaiah 45, there's evil and darkness. So now I ask you, have you ever believed in God, or did you lose your faith? Have people, church, or religion led you astray? Is it really about how God allows the pandemonium on this earth, or is it personal and you feel like God wasn't there for you when things were at their worst? I personally want to apologize for the identity theft you encountered, wolves which because were dressed in sheep's clothing were wrongfully accounted, people operating in the devil's ways under God's name and heavenly position. I personally apologize that some people falsely carry the name Christian, failing to measure up to the definition. Realize that no one is any less human than you, and no one deserves a pedestal. Regardless of title, tenure, or experience, we all have sinned and are peccable. The place where you believe people would hurt you the least may be the very place where people have hurt you the most. But understand that's not the church Jesus was referring to. Don't let the deplorable guest discredit the host. The devil is a fallen angel. His favorite place to hang is in the most holy places. Sometimes he infiltrates what is supposed to be the believer's oasis. Hurt people hurt people. It's a common tendency. But you can focus on the pain or you can focus on the remedy. You feel like God has failed you and the church has rejected you. Some of the church is infected and has misdirected when they should have been connecting you. You want to come as you are without being judged. There's this insatiable longing for your soul to break free, but your mind won't let you budge. Even in your disbelief, you desire more. Your spirit is looking for a way out, but your flesh can't find the door. Jesus said, "I am the door. Anyone who enters through me will be saved." Natural things will never be able to satisfy what your spirit craves. If you're burdened, if you're weary, Jesus said, "Come to me and I'll give you rest." No rules, no religion, just relationship at best. No, you can't do this or that. No condemnation or guilt trips. No denunciation if you fall short, trip, or let your grip slip. Giving God every hurt, every wrong, every pain you carry packed away in your baggage. repenting, confessing, forsaking all of your sins, and letting God restore your damage. Try him. Ask with an open heart and open mind for him to show and prove. He longs for you and is only waiting for you to first make the move. To the unbeliever. So, I'm only going to read that one. That really just addressed the people that try to argue that God isn't real because, one, of science, two, because of church hurt, three, because something has happened to them, because basically if God is, all of these things, then if God is all good, then he can't be all powerful, and if he's all powerful, then he can't be all good. One of those arguments, one of the philosophical kind of arguments. So it's like, I'm going to read just that one today, and tomorrow, I'm going to read one for the church, because it's a very valid argument when people are church hurt. Granted, you can't, use that as an excuse, but it's a valid argument. And the church needs to be held responsible. And so tomorrow, I'm going to read one for the church. It's called Under Construction. That was strictly for the church. If you're not a believer, tune out, because it doesn't apply to you.